Whenever you have the argument about 98.5% of DNA shared with chimps and so on, it's the 1.5% that we don't share that matters in this.
Yeah.
It's the difference we have between the child and the chimpanzee.
What about the example, Douglas, in the zoo of the one in the morning? The chimpanzee was very calm, collected stones and collected pebbles and collected rocks very calmly, and then when the visitors came later on, started pelting them with
sensible.
Yeah, well, indeed. But isn't that it? Or the one that found a stunned starling and climbed to the top of the tree and tried to release the stunned starling. They're extraordinary examples which do make us think that these are pretty intelligent creatures.
Nobody's denying their intelligence. Nobody is saying they shouldn't have respect and so on. But I think that the claim that they should have rights, or rights even equal to human rights, and we have to... I agree with some what Peter said. I don't think we do need a Christian principle solely to find the reason why we shouldn't kill, torture and maim human beings. But I would sort of remind us, if we're going to have a debate about giving apes rights, I mean, millions of people across the world, millions of human beings have had their rights routinely taken away from them. Millions of Iranians have just had their rights taken away from them by their government yet again. And the moment that human beings actually have the rights we talk of, the right not to be killed, not to be tortured, not to be imprisoned, we'll go for the apes next.
Yes, sir. Let's go to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of right is wrong. The protection should be provided for the great apes, and I think they're doing that at the moment. But by working with the local people who have interest within their protections, if you don't work with the local people, all the emphasis will be wasted.
Yeah, Anthony, I heard you wanted to come in a few minutes ago. Do we not have to, as human beings, get a new... We're talking about a sense of self here.
Yeah.
Do we maybe need to have a different sense of ourselves? We're not unique and apart. We're part of a continuum.
Well, I think that we are, and I think that just because human rights are often not respected doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't aspire to having universal rights that apply to all human beings. And I think that we can have separate rights for animals, and I think it's essential that we look after animals because they have dignity and they're alive too, but I think they shouldn't be at the same level, of course not, as human rights, and because apes are more highly developed, they should have more rights perhaps than worms.
But they grieve and they show empathy.
Well, that's why I'm saying they should have more, but it's very different to human rights. Human rights, we need to work far harder in our world in the 21st century to ensure, but we must also respect animals too.
Well, conclusion then,
yeah.
If human rights as a concept isn't working because they're being abused all over the world, we should scrap the concept? No, you're right, it's aspirational. And you're right that apes are protected in every country that they live naturally. Better in fact, than the laws in, say, the USA where they can be experimented upon. But it's not working, so we need more respect for apes.
And are we diminished?
One way that we humans have constructed to respect other humans is to say that all humans have certain basic rights. I think we can extend that to get that same level of respect. I'm more concerned with respect than rights, but you can get respect by asking people to recognise rights.
Douglas, forgive me for a second. Paula is here, and you want to become the legal guardian of Matthew.
That's right.
Don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
How old is Matthew?
Yeah, I'd just also like to make the point that if we were able to establish the three very basic rights for other great apes, I think that would actually establish human rights that we have. It would solidify them. It would enhance us as human beings.
Tell us about Matthew.
Okay, yeah, Matthew. He's an adult chimpanzee. He lives in an animal shelter in Vienna, Austria. He was born into a chimpanzee family in Sierra Leone. And unfortunately, an American pharmaceutical company saw fit to order him as a laboratory tool. And so he was taken from his family. His mother would have been shot in front of his eyes.
Do you think he remembers that?
I'm sure he's traumatized from that. He missed out also on very important learning phases that young chimpanzees need in order to be able to function as fully grown chimpanzees.
He's a chattel, basically, at the moment. How intelligent is he?
Well, I have a problem with judging whether somebody should be treated, or whether somebody should have the right to life, prohibition of torture, just because they're intelligent or not. I'm sure there's many people in this room who are a lot more intelligent than I am, and I hope that doesn't mean that I would be able to be used as a research tool.
You see very much so the higher premise as part of a continuum, yeah. with us, not that far behind us.
That brings me back to the point that the gentleman made here about the handicapped child and the ape. I mean, I would like to ask the gentleman, we could easily make this sphere narrower and say, what if you had to choose between your neighbour's handicapped child and your handicapped child? You know, Darwin himself said that these species, differentiations between the species, they're blurred.
I'm quite struck by the idea that if you really like this chimpanzee, you could simply buy it, and then it could no more be experimented on than my Labrador can, because I own it.
Because it would be defeating my point. My point is...
No, I do see you're making this bigger point, and that I think you've got a big uphill struggle. And the trouble is, it's a democratic struggle. If you can't persuade legislators to accord these rights, they don't exist.
What is the point? The point is that you cannot buy an animal, because then you're adding to the notion that that animal is a chattel. Is that why you're not buying Matthew?
Well, the important thing to mention here is that we're not asking, in this case with Matthew, we're not actually asking for a change in law. We're not actually asking for a political change. We're working within the law. The Austrian civil law says that all persons are right holders, but it doesn't define what persons are.
Paula, you want to come back in here? Then I remember you, Douglas, you wanted to say something.
I want to say that the genetic similarities are not what really matters. Are the properties of these individuals which are linked to moral reasons. For
we
example,
can't give them rights. Otherwise, what if one gorilla or one chimpanzee kills another chimpanzee? We can't put that chimpanzee up on trial. What if we have to? What if we have to? What if we have to, one is so sick that chimpanzee has to be put down? We can't ask that chimpanzee's family whether it's all right to take them to Dignitas, you know.
But children have rights, and, you know, you wouldn't put them in prison either.
Douglas, I mean, you mentioned earlier whether or not this means that I don't agree with the gentleman there who said that somehow if we gave apes rights, you know, we would be better as human beings, we would have more rights. I think quite the opposite. I think, I mean, referring back to what Peter said earlier about, Peter believes that the foundation for our moral system and the reason why we don't kill people is because of Christianity. I think that might be a fundamental for some people. But one of the things that's been established over recent decades and recent centuries has been the right not to refer to gods or holy books to explain why the human being is still sacred, is still, as it were, holy. Even without a god, human beings are still unique and still, as it were, sacred. And yet what is happening here is somehow the attempt to equate us with animals, to pretend that we are just like them. I think that most people know in their hearts this isn't true, but I think we should be very careful of this, because it is arguments like this that equate us with animals that make it harder, strangely enough, for other human beings to claim that we ourselves are just animals.
Some animals are quite like us.
Hutus and Tutsis in the 1990s, when they were slaying in Rwanda, were being treated like animals. And now I just think that the moment,
that's a part of human nature.
The moment, as I say, that human beings know how to treat each other, we can be more sacred about this.
Are we apes?
No, we're not. We're human beings, and apes are apes. I think that this romanticization of animal qualities is extremely startling and unnecessary. Given that we know everything we do about the evolutionary cycle, why are we then turning around with astonishing wonder that there is another creature that is quite close to us that we share a lot of DNA with? That should be no surprise, and that's certainly no cause to suddenly turn around and start giving animals rights.
With the sense of self? Do you believe that higher apes have a sense of self?
Yes, they do, but I think that the real issue should be to do with what we humans are doing in terms of encroaching on animals' natural habitats. And that doesn't just apply to apes, it applies to everything, and it applies to what we as humans are doing to the planet and to other species. But this issue, but can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
This thing about saying, oh, well, you know, there's a family of apes in the zoo, and this one's like the daddy, and this one's like the mummy. Well, so what? You know, we are doing enough. What we need to do is reform the way we treat all other animals, but this thing of sort of upgrading apes...
Yeah.